Welcome to Philly Fortune Talks with your host, Jake Penny, where the city's brightest minds share the secrets behind their success. Are you ready to be inspired?
Imagine unlocking your full potential and living a purposeful, fulfilling life. Today, we delve into the journey of Ben Koch, a certified mindfulness and breathwork facilitator and Procter & Gallagher Institute consultant. With over 20 years of experience, Ben empowers individuals and organizations through transformative coaching and consulting services. As the founder of It's All Connected Coaching, Ben combines purpose work, mindfulness, and innovative practices to help his clients discover their unique purpose and achieve their goals. His diverse background spans the corporate world, education, and the nonprofit sectors, bringing a broad landscape of understanding and empathy to his work. Ben, it's a pleasure to have you on Philly Fortune Talks.
Thank you, Jake. It's an absolute pleasure to be here chatting with you.
So your work spans, across various fields, including education, mindfulness, breath work. Can you share what initially motivated you to integrate those disciplines into your career?
Yeah, absolutely. So the core of my career, my background was in education, right? So I was a public school teacher actually in Texas for about 10 years and started to feel that sense of unease, like I needed to build something bigger. I was feeling constricted inside of such a big system. And so in 2013, just a little over 10 years ago, a buddy and I left and we co-founded an education company. So that kind of began the next phase of my professional career, which was entrepreneurship. And as an entrepreneur, there's no way getting around it. It's a self-work process, right? Like you may think you're just working on your business, but you're really working on yourself. And so that's what drove me deeper and deeper into this understanding of, how do I manage my own nervous system? How do I manage my own productivity, my own wellness? Because everything about my business was directly tied to my personal foundation of health and clarity, right? So then that's when I got deeper and deeper into my personal practices. First, it was personal, my own breathwork practice, my own mindfulness and meditation practice, my own mindset transformation. And then when that link just got stronger and stronger between the more I got clear on myself and brought the tools into my own practice, the more clear, the more effective I became as a leader, as a CEO, as an entrepreneur. I just started to find a special passion for this. So I went and even though I had a really strong personal practice, I went and I said, okay, I want to beef this up so that I can start to help others. So I went and got, the science-based mindfulness certification, the breathwork facilitator certification, and then all kinds of things, integrative health, the Procter & Gallagher Institute that you mentioned. And so for the last few years, that's been my transition, is less focus on the entrepreneurship in terms of business and more on how can I empower others with this work? Because I've seen you can't really separate success in these times from a self-mastery of your own system, and that's where it comes from.
Yeah, self-mastery is so important. And that's, there's like pillars of that, right? It's mindfulness, happiness, spirituality, relationship base, and having all those pillars of wealth. It's not just financial wealth, it's many other things, contribution. Having that self-mastery, that self-discipline of, getting all the head noise out so that you can be successful as an entrepreneur, right? The foundation is the work that you do. Right. Without
Exactly.
any of that stuff, there is no successful entrepreneurship because you'll drive yourself nuts.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Yeah. It's a circus for sure. If you don't understand, like you said, how to calm the inner voices, get really clear. As we know, it takes discipline, it takes habit, and it takes a really long vision. And you can't do that if you're easily stirred by your external environment. So it's about strengthening that internal environment. That's really what it's about. And that's what kind of led me to this core concept now for me, which is purpose. I had a pretty big personal experience back in 2018. I was at a conference out in California. It was an entrepreneurial conference. And so I was doing some sessions and there was a session on purpose. And I thought I had it all clear. You know, I was an entrepreneur. I was an acting CEO for an education company, global education. And so I thought, yeah, I'm helping the world. I'm saving the world. Like it's all good. I got this. I'm clearly in my purpose. But I went through that process, and there was this little ceremony they did at the end where you had to read your purpose statement
Mm.
to the whole conference. There's like 500 people there. And I went up and I read my purpose statement, and I had this clarity that it had completely fallen flat. And I was just kind of like parroting the things and the words that I thought I needed to say, because I was kind of internalizing some external ideas about myself. And that's what kind of triggered my purpose journey was, okay, interesting. I want to get clear on what my true voice is. And so over the next year, that's when I kind of dug in to my own purpose work. And I got to a point where I could craft my own purpose statement that when I said it out loud, like it was like a full body reaction. Like it was like, oh, that's what it feels like to be clear and like in alignment with your own voice and truth. And so that's what gets me so passionate about purpose work, is helping others find I call it the purpose frequency, because it literally feels almost like a frequency moving through your body when you're in it. And so it's not really about changing careers. Like you can be doing exactly what you're doing, but you get clarity on that. And there's just this internal shift. And then you're lit up again because you understand and you feel like why you're there. And so that's what's given birth to this focus I have now these last couple of years, which is purpose work. So uh, one-on-one organizational consulting, public workshops. I'm building an online community right now, all around this idea of support for people wanting to get and stay in that purpose frequency.
Yeah, that's super important, is your own personal mantra, your own purpose
Mm,
statement, so
yeah,
that you're in alignment with one, who you are. You're having what you do is impactful, but also like you're realizing your purpose again, your mission, your vision. Because without that, we're just on a hamster wheel. We don't really know why we're going through the day-to-day monotony. We feel lost. Our mental starts to, dissipate. We start to get second guessing and feel like shit.
yeah,
And it
absolutely.
happens all the time to not only entrepreneurs, like that's not just for entrepreneurs, that's for everyday people that go to work in the morning, put
Yeah,
the clothes on the same way as entrepreneurs do. It's like, hey,
yeah,
why am I still doing this? Right? Look in the mirror. It's like, oh, man.
yeah, yeah. I know, absolutely. And I remember early in the pandemic, there was this they were labeling it the Great Resignation. I'm sure you remember that.
Mhm.
So many people were having that sensation you just mentioned of like, what the hell am I doing? Like, how many years have I been doing the same thing, and am I getting anything from this?
Right.
And so they had the first piece, which was, okay, I'm not aligned right now. But what I realized is they were missing that second piece. Okay, if I'm not aligned to this, I'm not aligned to this. What am I aligned to? And you can only find that answer with like some inner stillness, you know? So for me, that's why this nervous system work and the mindfulness, like that's the foundation for any other big things you want to do.
Yeah, and it's very uncomfortable for someone that's never done it before.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I
They
know.
never actually took the time for themselves and said
Yeah,
like, "Hey, let's sit here in silence and get
yeah,
all these feelings and these what is true to me on paper." Most people just draw blanks and sit there for a little bit.
yeah. It's
Damn, this is
scary.
the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah, it's an edge. And so you mentioned silence, and I'm also a breathwork facilitator, and then it can be even more intense with that because you do some breathing exercises that really bring that energy down into the feeling body. And exactly like you said, it's like, whoa, whoa. I was staying away from that feeling for a reason, because it feels heavy and scary. But you and I know, and others who have done the work, that when you finally get to that and release it, let it process like it needs to. Like there's a lightness, there's a clarity that you feel, there's a new energy and creativity that you get, and it's totally worth that work.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I recently went down to the Temple of the Universe, Michael Singer's, if you're
Oh, wow.
familiar with that.
Yeah.
Untethered Soul,
Yeah.
the Surrender Experiment.
Modern
And
classic. Yeah.
and I was never like a meditator or anything like that, because I always find it so hard, right? It's like, oh man, I can never sit in silence.
Mhm.
Can never get the thoughts to stop. And when I went down there for a week, we'll go 3 times a day, in the morning, afternoon, and lunch.
Oh,
And Singer was like, He was like, meditation doesn't have to be what you think it is, like shamans, like
Yeah.
pure
Yeah.
silence sitting for hours on end. He was like,
Right.
because I was curious. I was like, man, I don't understand. I'm at the temple. People are meditating for hours. Like, how do they
Mm.
do that? He was like, well, that took a long time, but what you're doing and the voices you're hearing, that's still a form of meditation. You're acknowledging the frequencies, the vibrations going through your mind.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man. And there was a lot of other stuff too that was like super enlightening being down there.
Yeah.
Um, but on that topic, you felicitated numerous transformative workshops and coaching sessions. What key strategy has been essential for, your clients, helping them achieve impactful results?
Yeah, great question. So it's really about, like, you actually hit on it right there, because it's really about this contrast that we have between like the thinking mind, the cognitive mind that wants to process everything through like linear logic and words and language, versus the somatic mind, or the somatic body, the energies of the body, or sometimes just call it the subconscious mind. And so much of the work that we're talking about right now actually takes place beneath the thinking mind.
Hmm.
So to answer your question directly, I think the difference maker, one of the most impactful ways that I can support people, is when I help them get beneath that thinking mind just enough that the gateway is opened to a lot of that subconscious material that just needs to process, just needs to be acknowledged and seen. And if you think about it, like, it's a treasure trove, the subconscious mind, that
Hmm.
whenever you have a dream, whether it's, fantastical or weird or prophetic or whatever it is, all that stuff's coming from your subconscious mind. So just imagine the riches down there. So when you can access that consciously, the work just accelerates. So that's why, like, a lot of coaches these days are kind of what you call top down. They start with the language, they start with the thinking mind, and maybe eventually get down into like the energies of the body, what we call somatics. I kind of like to surf that in between space. Like, I'm a teacher, I'm a talker, I love speaking, so I don't mind engaging the cognitive mind, which I do. And I mean, you need to have a level of comfort for the client or the participants in a workshop, but you have to build in an experiential component where people have the opportunity to just kind of get down in there beneath the chatter and start to experience and feel. And that's what's really going to accelerate results. And over time, what leads to transformation, if you're able to integrate that stuff, you know?
Right. Yeah, and for some people, that's kind of like it just can happen for them. And some people it's challenging, right?
Yes.
So, can you talk about maybe a challenging experience or scenario? Maybe not just getting to the subconscious, but some other challenging thing in one of your workshops and how you helped your client overcome it.
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes, um, one of my keystone workshops right now is one called the Purpose Lab. And it's about a 2 hour experience, 2.5 hour experience, where I guide people through this, what I call the purpose discovery process. And we start off with a lot of the thinking mind stuff, like, here's the background, here's some definitions of purpose, here's some benefits of purpose and things like that. But then, slowly but surely we get kind of like closer and closer to like the inner voice and what it needs to say. And that can really be where a lot of the resistance comes up, because people come in to the workshop with a lot of ideas of what they think purpose is. And they come in with a lot of voices from the past or from the
Mm.
outside that are really influencing what they think they should be doing. So there's a sense of tension. So it may be parents, it may be cultural, it may be, a subculture that, makes them believe that they should be going in a certain direction or do a certain thing. And so sometimes in the middle of that workshop, we hit points of resistance where a client is just snagged on one of those old paradigms, right? And so sometimes what I really have to do is help that client just reach a point of a little bit of surrender, and just kind of release that snag. Don't fight it. It's kind of an ironic thing, because the answer isn't more force and more fight. It's this kind of surrender. You mentioned Michael Singer. I know he talks a lot about that. And somehow in that act of surrender, just kind of melting into it, a little bit of space is created, and they're able to like mentally and even emotionally kind of get around that moment and then get to this process where they're finally starting to interact with their own inner voice, you know? And it's scary. Sometimes it takes several sessions. Like I've had clients do that Purpose Lab workshop multiple times, and sometimes it's like the fourth time they have their aha moment. They're like, Ben, I finally got it. It hit me, right? It just takes some time and patience. I never promise like an overnight transformation or breakthrough. And lately, I've actually been using and thinking about the term slow transformation. You know, they have like these like slow food or, you know, slow travel. That's kind of a trend in certain places, right? I've been thinking lately about slow transformation because sometimes you have those instantaneous moments. You're just like primed for it. But in general, it just takes patience and persistence and a bit of letting go, which
Yeah.
is ironic, you know?
It definitely does. Like, I love that you're saying the slow transformation
Mm,
because we live in a world where we want quick fixes, and we live in the Amazon world. We live in instant dopamine gratification, and it's
yeah.
like we've lost touch with like putting in the work, right?
Yes.
We all
Yeah.
put in the work every day, showing up at our jobs or our
Yeah.
businesses, right? But we don't actually put the work in for ourselves, for us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's really cool that you're saying slow transformation because that's reality, right?
Uh-huh.
They can be sold the sauce of like, oh, fast transformation overnight. Yeah, can it happen? Sure, right? But it's a finite amount of people that actually happens to. A lot
Yeah.
of other people they have to work and grind on the craft of, releasing and letting go, acknowledging, deep down in that subconscious mind and separating themselves from that experience they had of whatever it may be so they can have that paradigm shift. And yeah, it takes work.
Yeah. I love that expression. It took me 10 years to become an overnight success, or like however many years,
Yeah,
right? But
yeah. Yeah. People don't see you work in the shadows. And then once
yeah.
you're to the light, they're like, oh my God, overnight success. It's like,
Yeah.
no, you didn't see the blood, sweat, and tears and the
Yeah.
countless hours that I devoted, the sacrifices that I made.
Yeah.
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 Oh,
And you can't really have that level of persistence or grit if you don't have a sense of purpose to why you're doing it, you know? If you're grinding with purpose, like that's passion, but grinding for someone else's vision, like that's no, not for me. I'll just put it that way.
that's
Yeah.
you're already dead. You just haven't, been put in the ground yet.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So your work into your how should I say this? Your background has many different diverse professional you've been in many different things. So how has that influenced your leadership style in both educational and mindfulness settings?
Yeah, that's great. So I think a lot about like styles of leadership and types of leadership. And I've thought about sometimes I think about in terms of like, okay, a leader, the art of leadership is the art of holding space in some way. And there's different ways to hold space. And I saw this wonderful, graphical representation one time. It was quadrants, and it was talking about masculine versus feminine approaches to leadership and passive versus active. So I wish I had the visual in front of me because it's so cool. And masculine and feminine, not in terms of like gender, but in terms of like think about universal cosmic energy, right?
Hmm.
So there's like the active masculine leadership style where you're kind of like penetrating the space and kind of imposing your energy on the space. There's the passive masculine where you're just creating a really clear container and you're a little bit more removed and you're kind of holding a little bit more freedom in there. And then there's the active feminine and passive feminine where they kind of have their correlates as well. And in my own reflection, I realized that my natural kind of sweet spot is that passive masculine, where I'm really good at helping people feel a sense of safety and a sense of expansion and giving them the room and the space to kind of like unfold. And that all started actually, now it's a leadership in when I work with adults and teams and communities. But that all started in the classroom teaching elementary school, I'll tell you, because I discovered that when I tried to put on that some more authoritarian and direct, or call it active masculine, even with those little kids, it just didn't feel right.
Mm.
Like you can get things done quickly sometimes, but if that's not your mode, you're going to burn out. And so I had the most success as a classroom teacher in that passive masculine, where I was creating clear boundaries, right? Really clear boundaries, but holding space for that unfolding. And so that's what I brought with me into the adult world when I work with groups or individuals, is the art of holding space. And for me, it's the passive masculine, but also knowing that you have to have the ability to be dynamic and shift, So there are moments of, I got to turn up the more active, the more direct, right? Other times you got to kind of get into a more feminine, receptive mode, right? There's kind of that divine feminine energy and holding space for creativity and mystery, and the boundaries are a little bit looser, right? So for me, that's been a beautiful model I've reflected on the last few years in terms of leadership. Yeah, so I like that question.
Now, have you taken like a test to figure out that you're like that's how you are, or is that just something you came upon through learning your craft?
Yeah, so actually, I know I was at a workshop where that was introduced by the author, and in that workshop, she kind of guided us through this self-assessment, and that's where I had the aha. And since then, I've tried to find her. I've tried to find more materials. I've tried to find the book or anything because I wanted to learn more and actually teach others, and I can't find her.
Oh man.
That's my confession. All I have is that the one handout that I got in that workshop. But yeah, it did involve like a self-assessment.
Got
And
it. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, I just was curious because, like, there's the culture index, there's disc profile, there's the Enneagram, there's
yeah,
the Inky Guy, like a bunch of different tests and
yeah.
whatnot to take. So I was just curious because I haven't heard that one. So I was like, oh man, I should
Yeah,
definitely try that out.
another one for the inventory. You're right, exactly.
You're just keeping the secret sauce.
I'll unveil it someday. Yeah.
So balancing your professional commitments and your with personal life can be challenging for any entrepreneur, right? I believe in integration. Some people believe in balance. But for you, what's your thoughts? Is it balance or integration? And what daily habits or routines, help you stay focused and effective?
Yeah. Wow, what a great question. I'm definitely more on the integration side. Like I think for a lot of people, if it's that hard boundary that's like a mathematical balance and that works for them, that's great. But for me, especially as an entrepreneur, as someone kind of in this personal development space, there's not really a clear, the clock hits 5 or whatever time it is, and like you're off. Like it just doesn't work that way. It's 24/7. You're on in some way because you're working on your vision. It's like your kid. It's like your passion, right? So you can't just let it go. So I like integration. And when I find myself feeling off kilter or out of balance, I do, that inner compass. If it's telling you you're out of balance, then I know, okay, um, you're digging a little bit too hard. So you got to find a way to channel that energy in a different direction. And so my forms of balance are pretty simple and direct and classic in some ways. Like I have a morning meditation practice, right? And then I've learned that for me in particular, I need to run 2 or 3 times a week. Years ago, I ran to train for races and, did a couple marathons and ultra marathons, and that was fun. But nowadays, I've tried to cut running from my routine completely. And I realized there's like about a 7 or 8 day threshold. And then the brain fog's there. And I'm like, what's
Oh.
going on? Like, what's going on? And I go, oh, I just need to go for a run. So there's something about the movement of the body. And I'll give a really specific example right now. That's because I just moved to Philly about 6, 7 months ago in January. So I'm pretty new in Philly. So I've been trying to build my Philly network and make connections and things like that. And it was kind of like the grind approach. So, like reaching out, trying to network. And I was hitting some dead ends and it was not going as fast as I thought. So I just kind of said, okay, I'm going too hard at this. I need to chill out. And I found I live about 2 blocks from the Schuylkill River. And I found this dragon boat club. I'd never done water sports. I'd never been in a canoe, but I thought that looks fun. And there's physical activity, there's lots of people. I'm just going to take that approach and see if that brings me a sense of balance and integration. So a few months ago, I joined the Dragon Boat Club right here in Philly. I go a few times a week and early in the morning out on the river. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's so peaceful and meditative out there. You get a nice workout. I get home, it's like still 7:30 in the morning and my day's about to start. And so that's a really direct, specific example right now, is like finding something unexpected. So I gave myself two conditions, like, okay, I need to find something that's physical workout and I've never done before. And there's a community component. And so brand new skill, having to be a beginner, getting spanked and schooled by like people 20, 30 years younger than me. I was like, all right, I needed some of that. So that's one way that I find integration or balance, if you will.
Yeah, and that's really, cool because you also factored in their like growth without
Ah,
even really thinking about it because you went into the uncomfortable and you got comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's when personal
yeah,
growth happens. So you threw yourself in a fire, burned the life rafts, burned the boats, and said,
literally,
I'm
yeah.
gonna figure this out. I've never done this before. I'm in a new environment. There's plenty of people that are younger than me, but it's that mindset that you have that, you may not even think that you put into it. It's like, man, like you just went all
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
and made it happen.
Thanks for seeing that and seeing me. I appreciate it. Yeah, exactly.
So what upcoming trends or opportunities um in the education space that you're in now, mindfulness, um, self-work, are you most excited about and how are you preparing for it?
Yeah. So what my focus lately has been on this question of how can we build meaningful community. And in this day and age, I'm focused primarily on virtual spaces, virtual community. And, social media is fantastic in so many ways. Networks like LinkedIn and the others, help us connect globally, way beyond any geographical limitations. But what I found is there's something special about a community that's a little bit more focused and tight and committed. And so I've been playing around with some platforms. I don't know if you've heard of Mighty Networks before. There's some other
Mm.
ones. These are some online platforms just designed and engineered to nurture community. So what I'm excited about is I'm building a purpose-focused community for people who do the Purpose Lab or who want to access resources related to purpose work or mindfulness, and to just see. I got like a 5 and 10 year vision for it. So I'm not looking for a quick fix, but I want to see what does it take to build a community that people come back to again and again, where they feel connected, they feel welcomed, and they want to stick around. Because I think for me, that's the age that's coming. It's almost like social media is that initial contact, but it's so big and vast, and we know that it's a wild card. Like every time you hit that feed, you don't know what's going to come at you, how it's going to trigger you. So for me, it's like secondary space of one step removed from that, a real focused, cultured community. That's what I'm most excited about in terms of upcoming trends.
Yeah, that's cool. Building a community, a tribe, a mastermind of
Yes.
people that want to take it beyond the initial dopamine hit, right? Of social, like
Yes.
build meaningful relationships, build, meaningful things in life, give back, like the five pillar wealth. Like who wants to build those things with me?
Yes.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I love how you put it. Exactly.
So if you had one piece of advice for aspiring entrepreneurs, coaches out there, what would it be?
Yeah. So I think it kind of goes back to everything we've been talking about is, you know, you're you're in that space as an entrepreneur because you've got a fire and a passion and you need to listen to that and follow it. But don't neglect the inner peace and the inner development, because that's going to be your foundation. And you can use all kinds of words for it. If I'm working with someone who doesn't like the more spiritual language, then it's just your nervous system. So entrepreneur, don't neglect your own nervous system, know how to manage it, know how to downregulate, know how to upregulate, because that makes you, man, that's going to give you like a huge advantage over anyone else in your marketplace, in your space, if you're able to own your own nervous system, right? You're going to have more mental clarity, more endurance, higher intelligence output. Like it's going to be all to your advantage. And sometimes it feels like a step back. Like, I don't have time to take 20 minutes to meditate, Ben. You're crazy. I got to grind out the next email. But it's like, hold on a second, spend those 20 minutes. And then the next 3 hours are going to be 3 times more productive. So that's my one thing for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, always make time for yourself first. Serve yourself first so that you can go out and serve others better.
100%. Yeah.
So Ben, time flies when we're having fun. Now, as we're wrapping things up, a lot of people like ourselves are self-employed. We're going through the day-to-day tasks. We're really, really dialed in. We're really doing well with our profession or our job, but we start thinking about the future. We're thinking about, at some point, I may not want to be doing this coaching, or I may not want to be running this business, or I may not want to be in sales anymore forever. Do you have any thoughts on that, of creating passive income or replacing your income through investments or something like that for yourself and your family in the future?
Yeah. So great question. So it's not an area of expertise, but for me, but obviously as I'm getting older, it's something I do think about a lot, having some level of freedom, as I want to be geographically mobile and not dependent on any kind of grind for a regular income. So something I definitely think about.
Yeah, it's definitely important as
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, as we are the captain of our ship, the leader of our destiny.
Yes.
And we focus so much on, grind, 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 produce, 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 and we like tend to forget about that future standpoint.
Yeah.
I always like future thinking too, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it is.
So Ben, for the listeners that, want to connect with you, learn more about you, your work, get involved, attend one of your workshops, where's the best place for them to go and get started?
Yeah. Beautiful. So my personal site is benjaminkoch.live, and that's KOCH. But if anything I said about purpose and anything I said about community piqued your interest, go to purposelab.live. I haven't even really announced it to the world yet, but that's the community that I've been cooking up. I'm actually about to go live with it in the next couple of days. So purposelab.live, there'll be a little landing page. You can request to join, and that's where I'm building this community around purpose. And of course, there's always just direct message, someplace like LinkedIn, that I'm always happy to interact with folks and explore.
Perfect. Well, Ben, it's a pleasure to have you on Philly Fortune Talks today.
It's been an honor, Jake. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, Ben. Have a great one.
Okay, you too.
Thanks for tuning in to Philly Fortune Talks with Jake Penny. Inspired to share your success story? Visit phillyfortunetalks.com/guest and let's inspire together.